Phew. Well, you've caught us down on this rather muddy beach in the river estuary. We're down getting a few ragworms and maybe a few peter crabs because I want to go fishing. Welcome to Simple Surf Casting 2. Now, on Simple Surf Casting 1, we showed you what was available on the sandy beaches. This time we're doing completely the opposite. We're going to get absolutely smothered in mud, so hope you'll join me. The worms we're looking for are Nereus virens, king ragworms. Now, these are a bit of a lethal weapon when it comes to fishing. They're armed with a rather nasty set of choppers, which can give you a bit of a painful nip. They're not actually dangerous as such. They can't do any real damage. What they can do, they can draw a little drop of blood if they're big enough. And the biggest ragworm that we know of so far, according to the Guinness Book of Records, was 44 inches long, which was found at Whitley Bay, which is a good few hundred miles away. I don't think we'll find any that big, but I've dug them on this particular bed in the past up to 2.5 feet long, which is more than big enough, I think. Anyway, let's continue, see what we can find. These particular ragworms live in the filthiest environment you could think of. It's a mixture of alluvial mud, shale, and where the shale is near the surface in layers, they actually burrow in between the layers. Just to show you what we're actually looking for, these are the actual item. That is a king ragworm, nice colours. I can't for the life of me understand why a worm that lives in such filthy conditions should have such glorious colours on it. That's one of the vagaries of nature. Anyway, that's what we're after. There are one or two other strange things that live out here, and we've just dug one about 5 minutes ago. I've no idea what it is. Strangest looking thing I've ever seen. Perhaps somebody'd like to write to me and tell me exactly what it is, because I'm no marine biologist. Now, again, I've no idea what a creature this lovely bright orange colour is doing living in thick mud. But there you go, that's one of the vagaries of nature. He's certainly got a set of jaws on him anyway. So he's a type of ragworm. I'll get the books out when we get home and look it up and see what we can find. Anyway, what we'll do now is we'll move over to where the boulders are, because ragworms have a habit of living in under the boulders. You can see the holes of the things that we're looking for. There's one there, there's another one here, and we'll probably see some tracks. There's a track there. It's a really big one there. Right, so here we go. And there you go, one big worm. I've got a boulder in here, Pete. There's a big hole there. Got the spade. Yeah, I've got a worm here. Oh, well, righto. You put that hole again. Put the spade in there, there's the hole. You've got to get the spade in underneath the rock. Right, here we go. See it, can you? Yeah, just down. Oh Christ, yeah, it's a big one. Going down. Oh, look at the colour of that. Oh, he's busting. Yeah, you mustn't pull the toes. Look at that, Pete. Punch fingers. I think it's time to move on. I think we've exhausted this bit. We'll just squash it down. Make it off a bit. There we go. Right, move on to the next boulders. Okay, Pete. Oh, there's a nice patch. Alright, so there's a few holes around the edge. So clear the rocks away. That's a big one. Now look at these tracks here. You see these are, there's actually a ragworm there. Look, can you see him? Yep. Who needs a fork? He's only a little tiny one, but there you go. Just goes to show. If there's shelter, they'll use it. There we go. Fairly small these. Possibly there's one or two harbour rag in among these because we're getting up towards the middle level of the beach. Let's stick a fork in, see what we can find. So there we go. Small ragworms. Let's have a look at it. Give them a rinse. Harbour rag. You can see there's a red vein down the middle of its back, which distinguishes the two species. Lovely flounder bait. Funny enough, not much used in the southwest of England. There's a big worm just coming out there. There we go. Okay, bait. Very gently. There you go. There. There's one. Now, if he's retracting, all you do. Okay, Pete, just leave him with me for a minute. If he's retracting down his hole, if you just gently squeeze the head, it makes the tail end relax, like that, and you can just pull him out the hole. Okay, Pete. Once you've got your ragworms out of the mud, it's noticeable, if you go in a lot of shops, they store the things in vermiculite. Now, vermiculite's interesting material. It's a natural mica, and it contains acid anhydrides, which can actually damage the worm. Now, you can do one of two things: either don't use vermiculite to store them in, or you can actually soak your vermiculite in seawater, get rid of the fines, and then the worms will keep a lot better. The big problem that we found in the past with vermiculite, which was showed me by Alan Vaughan, who's a marine biologist, is when you put dry vermiculite in with ragworms, it's a natural insulator. The worm feels something that is apparently warm and promptly has a bite at it. Now, a worm has no method of throwing up its stomach contents. So when Alan Vaughan took one of the worms that had been in the vermiculite and slit it down the middle, it was full of little pieces of vermiculite. And of course, what happens is the worm tries to force these particles through its alimentary canal. Pressure builds up, it swallows air, and I imagine you've all seen the case where the worm, when you try and put the worm on the hook, snaps in half and fizzes. And this is what causes it. It's because they've been stored in dry vermiculite and the worm actually swallows the stuff. Now, you can see this for yourself. If you put a worm on your hand, it will have a bite at you for no other reason than the worm actually wants to feed. And the way that the worm feeds is it detects the change in temperature in the mud. When it feels a slight change in temperature, that usually means that there's some decaying animal matter in front of it, and that's what the worm feeds on. They'll feed on each other as well. So it pays to keep the temperature down, keep the worm fairly torpid, so store them at about between 4 and 6 degrees centigrade in a decent fridge. I find myself, I use cat litter trays, and perhaps 50 to 60 worms in a cat litter tray. Bear in mind that I'm doing it as a commercial thing as well as for myself. 50 or 60 worms in a cat litter tray with about an inch and a half of water and a small aerator stone fed off a pump. The pump I use feeds about 6 or 7 different trays with different baits in. And you should be able to keep these ragworm in tip-top condition, providing you change the water fairly regularly. You should be able to keep them for at least 3 to 4 weeks. Right, try and get some crabs now. Right in front of me is one of the famed South Devon peeler crab mines. The essence is the tide comes up, sweeps over them, and the crabs, to grow, have to shed their shell. They have an exoskeleton, so they reabsorb the calcium into the liver. The old shell is then split away, and the new shell that's underneath is expanded by the crab just sucking in water and just literally blowing itself up. This is one that we picked up a little earlier on, and this one's well in the process of shedding its old shell, and you can see the new coming out there, which of course is just like jelly. Now there are some anglers who think that this is a little bit too far gone to use. Don't you believe it? I know anglers who give their eye teeth for a supply of these all through the winter. Now then, once all this shell has been shed, then the crab will redirect all the available calcium back into the new shell, which will harden up in a matter of 3 or 4 days. Now there's an interesting little simile that goes with this, is the crab, when it's soft, is terrified of any other crab finding it. Once it's shed its shell, it immediately thinks that its old shell is another crab. So the soft crab will immediately scuttle out of one of these traps and into the next one. So if you find an empty shell, if you check either side, almost invariably you'll find a jelly crab, a soft crab. Now this is the state in which flounders and so forth actually find these crabs. It's a fallacy that fish feed on peeler crabs. When the crab feels itself ready to shed its shell, it will get into the deepest hole it can find to get well out of the way of any predators. So the only time when a fish will actually find a crab anywhere near peeling is when the crab comes out of either the hole where it's been in under the weed, into another hole, or out of one of these traps and into the next trap, to avoid its own shell. So in a way the crab's frightened of its own shadow. Anyway, what we'll do is we'll just go through these few pots here and see what we can find. There's a crab. And you see this characteristic biscuit colour underneath. It's probably a peeler, but there's no guarantee. So the way to check is just hold the crab nice and tight. When people try and pull the whole leg off, in fact all you need to do is just take just the tiniest end and just nip the end of one leg off. If it's a peeler, you can see just that tiny little piece of new leg there. Just like a little piece of jelly. So that's a peeler crab, that's fine. Lovely bait, straight in the bucket. No messing about. When we finish, we'll rinse all the mud and so forth off them, give them a nice fresh piece of weed, cover themselves up and take them home and put them in the fridge. Right, let's try this one. Can't feel anything in this one. They go off down all sorts of funny angles. Oh, hang on a minute. You'll get a few cuts and grazes doing this. Always make sure that you reset your crab pot at a nice angle, like that. And there's plenty of hole down there. Pack the mud down around it. One of the signs that there may be a crab in the traps is there's a little bit of darker mud just at the entrance there, which has been thrown out by the crab. Now, almost certainly there's going to be one in here. In fact, I can feel it. There he is. There you go. They get themselves well down. I don't know what state of peeling this particular fellow's in. He looks about the right colour underneath again. So we'll just rinse him off and just have a look. Again, don't tear a whole leg off, just the tiniest end. And if he's not a peeler, you haven't done any of that. But as it happens, this one's a beautiful peeler. Look at that. There we go. Proper Devon peeler. Into the bucket, try the next one. Don't forget to reset the pot, make sure all the mud's nicely sealed round there, and make sure there's plenty of room for the next crab. Next one. Now that one's empty. Take out a bit more mud. There we go. Set it nicely. Right. Large crab. Lovely. Bit of luck. We'll get 3 baits out of that one. Out the body and another couple of baits out the claws and legs, providing of course it's a peeler. Looks good. We'll give it a rinse. Well, there's no doubt about that. That's the biggest one yet today. Put him in the bucket. Well, that was an easy one. Look at that. Now here's another one just coming out of his shell. We've caught him right in the middle, in flagranti seducto almost. As you can see, they go absolutely limp, almost lifeless. But he's well alive, and he'll make a lovely couple of baits. Yep. Yep. There we go. There, that's those done. Now bear in mind that somebody has put all these crab pots down. In this case, I have. And I'm not very happy about people going and helping themselves to the results of my endeavours, and I think you'll find that everybody else in this area is exactly the same. It's taken a lot of hard work to get these pots fishing. So if you want to come down, get some crabs, by all means do so, but make sure that you reset the pots the way that we've left them so that they carry on fishing. Nobody likes a thief, but if you want to help yourself, make sure that we can get some crabs when we want some crabs. Right, let's go. Sort out the bait, put it in the cooler, ready for next week's fishing. Welcome back to the shop. Now, most people who are starting surf casting will start off with a reel similar to this, which is fitted with a level wind mechanism. Now, this is fine for short and medium range surf casting, but the amount of space that is available for your thumb is limited, and eventually you will reach the stage where your thumb will start to slip with the pressures involved in long range surf casting. Now, fortunately, manufacturers have thought about this, and there are reels available on the market now which come with no level wind fitted. Daiwa would do a fine one there. Shimano Speedmaster is another one, although it's got a narrower, deeper spool, which some people can't hold very well because it's a high reel. But if you have a reel with a level wind, then there are available conversion bars, such as this, which you can either do it yourself fit, or quite a few tackle dealers in the country now offer a reel converting service. And all this does is it fits in the place of the level wind, and then the top bar is surgically removed, and either a small stud is placed in its stead or a couple of small plastic caps. But if the manufacturer produces an item, then being somewhat lazy, then I tend to use the item that the manufacturer has given me. Right, we'll put this away and we'll talk about the tools that you need for servicing reels. Now, the tool that the manufacturers give is adequate, but you're better off using decent screwdrivers. If your reel is fitted with crosshead screws, make sure you use a crosshead screwdriver. The number of reels that I've had to repair or service where it's been almost impossible to undo the screws because the wrong tool has been used, I just lost count. If it's got crosshead screws, make sure you've got a good crosshead screwdriver and make sure nobody else borrows it. This Speedmaster is about 3 years old, and you can see from the state of these screws that the correct tools have been used. Now, I have seen these where it's been almost impossible to take off the side plate because the screws have been so badly abused. I normally keep a container on the table, so as the screws come out, you just throw them in the container, and you don't have to end up on your knees on the floor scrabbling about. Right, thumbs behind the spool, just push and the end plate just pops off. Now the end plate's off, we can remove the spool, and at this point be careful not to lose the centrifugal brake blocks. Now these are the brake blocks here, and what I'll do is I'll remove those and just put them in with the screws. Now the actual centrifugal brake blocks throw outwards onto the centrifugal brake drum here. Now quite often this gets contaminated with oil that's thrown by centrifugal force from this bushing here. This still needs lubrication even though it's a bush. So all we need to do basically is just give the drum a quick wipe. Right, the best thing to clean the inside of the wheels with is lighter fluid, refined petroleum. Right, this should take any accumulated muck off the inside of that, and there it is. So now we've got a nice clean brake drum. The brake blocks again, just give a rinse. We drop the lighter fluid to make sure there's no oil on those. Allow those to dry. Now while those are drying we can add the lubricant to the bearings. So on the left hand side plate, a couple of drips, just allow that to soak in, and a couple of drips down onto the other bearing at the other end. Again, just make sure there's no excess floating about, just mop it off. Now we can put these back on the two centrifugal brake pad holders, like so. This now goes back into the reel. Now always have the reel out of gear when you're doing this, otherwise you're working against a spring all the time. So always make sure the reel's out of gear when you're doing this. Then this end, just put it on and just spin the end round just to line up the holes, like so. 4 screws again. And several times we've had people who have literally wrenched these screws tight and they've torn the threads clean out from the frame of the reel. Fortunately, Shimano, in their wisdom, have made available oversized screws to take that into account. Right, that one's now ready. Not too fast, but not too slow. That's ready for use. This particular type of reel we can take apart and do a simple service from the drive side. Just 3 screws. The end comes away. The spool comes out again. Try not to lose the centrifugal brake block. In this case there's only one. Right, main bearing there. Second main bearing is on the other side. Well accessible. In this particular, we're not going to do a big service. All we're going to do is just again make sure the centrifugal brake drum is nice and clean. It's by wiping it out with a lighter fluid soaked piece of tissue. So that's now nice and clean. We'll now add just a drop or two of rocket fuel lubricant. And because these reels, like all reels, do suffer from saltwater corrosion, I like to put a little bit of polymer grease just inside on the main gearing. I also like a little bit just around this edge here. It starts off as a liquid, but then it sets, and this just helps to keep saltwater corrosion at bay. The frame does suffer from it as well, and again you can just put a little bit on and just smear it around the reel seat area. Doesn't interfere in any way with fishing or casting. Right. small centrifugal brake block. We'll just give it a rinse with lighter fluid. Just dry it off. And just gently tighten up the screws. Moderation in all things. And in this particular case, although the manufacturers have provided you with a screw slot, try not to be tempted to use it. You just use your fingers to tighten it up, and then you can be assured that you're not going to damage the reel. Right. Any faster than that and it would probably be totally uncontrollable. But there we are, just right. Not overfilled. Right, that's the two centrifugal braked reels dealt with. Final one I'll have a look at this afternoon is the magnetically braked one. For a while, magnetically braked reels seem to be going out of fashion, but just lately there's been a revival among the tournament casting brigade, and this particular item now actually fetches more money second-hand than it cost in the first place, which I find quite amusing. But for all that, they have one advantage over the centrifugally braked reels, and that's that you can adjust the magnets to suit the conditions you're fishing under. Now there's another difference with these. These two, the spool was just a solid spindle which rotated with the spool. With this particular item, the spindle is completely separate. Sits down the middle, and the bearings actually sit inside the spool itself. Now Abu have christened this system their ultra cast system, and it does cast remarkably well. Absolutely surprising. Anyway, nice and easy to flush out. You just flush down the middle just to take out any old rubbish. Couple of drips of oil. There's a bearing at each end. That's about all it needs. Just mop off the excess on each end. And having done that, you'll find that these reels are so well balanced that the spool will spin for 20 or 30 seconds, just like that. But as soon as you put the magnets back, then the magnetic braking system comes into effect, and the reel won't spin anywhere near as free, as you can see. All right. Just do these screws back up. Again, don't over tighten these. That should run like a train now. Lovely. And don't forget, with these you can set the braking to suit the conditions you're fishing under. Right, we've got 3 reels to play with, so we'll now go down the beach and show you what they're capable of doing. So, do you think this dialer hat of yours has improved your distance?
Oh yes, wearing this hat, Phil, has given me an extra 30 yards.
Come on, improve it.
Oh, right, okay. Measured me drop, take it out of gear. Feet in the direction I'm casting.
Rod tip, lead and heel, all in line, that's right.
Left hand in front of right shoulder.
Spot on. Look up.
Look up.
Don't forget, look up.
Look up. Cast.
Come on, you take mine, I'll wind it in.
Oh.
Save your poor little arms.
That's it. I'm just a young man.
Problem you've got here is the reel is set much too high up the butt for your own stature.
Right.
Okay, like everybody else that I see on the beach, virtually, they just stick the reel on willy-nilly. The manufacturer's given you a pair of coaster clips, but there is a fairly exact formula to enable you to put the reel exactly where you need it for your own build. So we've got big rod
Yeah.
for a big man,
Yeah.
smaller rod for a smaller man.
Yeah.
Ideal.
Yeah.
And of course, big man, little rod, broken rod.
Right. Okay.
So
Yeah.
everything's got to match. So what we'll do is we'll take the reel off.
Yeah. You see the He-Man way I put it on.
Stick it in my pocket.
Don't cast while it's
Now.
there. What do we do?
We now put this across your shoulder. I want your hand up next to your shoulder there.
Yeah.
And that hand up next to your shoulder there. I'll take the rod.
Right.
And we'll move that along. Right. Now we've got the width of your shoulders.
Yeah.
Plus the width of your two hands.
Right.
And then if you allow about ½ an inch for every ounce of the lead that you want to cast.
So I've got 150 grams on there.
Well, it's roughly 5 ounces,
5
so about
ounces.
another 2.5 inches. So your
Yeah.
reel actually wants to go about there. So we'll just tape that up. There we are. And I'll put a couple of bands of tape on so that the coasters can actually grip this bit of tape,
Right.
and that will make everything all nice and secure.
So shoulder width, then another ½ inch per ounce.
Shoulder width plus your hand width,
Yeah.
plus a ½ inch for every ounce of the biggest lead you're going to use.
Okay.
Right, we're nearly there. Reel out of pocket. Now we don't have to worry about lining up on these rings.
Because you can turn the top of the rod.
Just turn the top of the rod round.
Right.
That's it.
Too much squeeze on these things must mean broken blank, yeah?
Well, if you've got a very thin-walled blank, yes, you can.
Yeah.
You can actually do a bit of damage.
Right.
But-
I'm putting the coasters in line. I see you're setting it sort of offset at an angle.
Yeah, I put the front one slightly out of line
Yeah.
so it doesn't interfere with my finger. Because
Right.
when I take the thumb off the reel, I usually, I don't know whether it's just me, but I tend to let go with my finger as well, you see, take
I'm
the
with
thumb
you.
off.
Yeah.
And if you've got a coaster in the way, especially if you haven't got this little piece of rubber on, you end up cutting your finger because some of these, they're
yourself.
quite sharp.
Right.
Right, now try a cast
Okay.
with that set like that. So what we'll do is we'll
Right.
just straighten up, get everything nice and in line
Turn it
again.
over. Back round a bit.
That's about it.
Keep going. Touch more. A tad. That's about it. I've got a wonky eye, so I'd never know anyway.
Right, now do another cast.
Right.
And you feel the
And
difference.
there we go on this.
Everything
That's
will
about-
feel much more taut, much more crisp.
Right.
Okay, and you'll find the release velocity for the same amount of effort, you'll find it'll actually go faster.
Great.
Okay,
Give it
have
a
another
whirl.
go.
See what happens.
Do exactly the same.
Right.
Use roughly the same amount of power as you did last time.
Yeah.
Don't forget to look up and cast up.
Oh yes, it
That's
feels
the
much,
secret.
much shorter than I normally use it. So left hand out, eyes round, eyes up, cast.
No, it's a bit too
Whoa.
down, that one. Have another go. Don't forget, it's got to go up.
Walk backwards here. 2 more feet, 3 more feet, 4 more feet. More feet. Why do they always seem to go on longer than you've ever done them? Great, I'm there. Level winding. How important?
Very important. If you've got a great fat chunk of line on your left
Yeah.
and a narrow chunk of line on your right,
Yes.
then the narrow chunk is going to only feed off a small amount of line.
Right.
Okay, so then your spool is spinning fast,
Uh-huh.
and then the line moves over to where it's very broad
Yes.
and tries to throw off the same amount of line. But in fact,
Gotcha.
you've got more line, so that's where your
I'm
loops
with
come
you.
from.
It's all down to physics at the end of the day, isn't it?
Well, it is really.
Right. On the deck.
That's it. Now, don't forget to go for height.
Tip.
So, turn
Legs.
your head,
Feet.
look up.
Height. Da-da-da.
Look up. That's the
there,
secret.
And cast it.
There you go. It's better.
Bang. That actually, I have to say, felt a lot more sensible for my length of arms. I don't understand it totally.
Let me wind it in for you.
I'm becoming
Because
a
you've
tired
got
man.
poor little arms.
I'm getting a relatively good consistency in my direction. Actually,
Well, that's
confident
quite
enough
important.
to change direction. now
Well,
with it as
don't forget,
well, so.
we showed you how to change
Yeah.
direction last time
Yeah.
on the gun turret principle.
Gun turret quite appropriate here, really, for Slapton Sands, isn't it? You know,
Yeah, well,
we're probably standing on one.
there's always bullets and things washed up here all the
Is
time.
there?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Now then. Right. You going to have another try, or shall I move
Let's
on.
move on. Let's move on.
Move on a stage,
Yeah.
righty-ho. Now, from simple surf casting part 1, we saw put the lead down, to swing the lead, push down, out it goes,
Yeah.
wait for it to climb, and then round into the off the ground position and cast.
Right.
Now then, eventually, you suddenly realise that instead of swinging the lead in and putting it on the ground, you can literally pick the rod up so the lead comes in, lower the rod again and it'll swing,
Right.
just like that.
Yeah.
Now that obviously takes practice, but people say to me, oh, you can't do that off the rocks. Well, this is a way of getting around that criticism, you see.
Right, I'm with
but
you.
again,
Yeah.
it takes practice. So obviously you start off the ground, push down. Now you see how slowly you can do it.
Yes.
That's the other important thing. People try and rush. And don't forget, the longer the piece of line from the rod tip to the lead, the slower the pendulum swing will be.
Right.
Now the big mistake is to try and pendulum cast with about a 3-foot drop. Now,
Right.
I'm always seeing this on the beach, people going tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock.
Yeah.
Right, complete waste of time.
Right.
The longer the drop that you use for the pendulum cast, the softer the rod will appear to be.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Okay. Yeah. Again, it's about finding a drop suitable to you
To
initially.
you, that's right, yeah. Well,
Okay.
what I normally say is for off the ground, use about half the rod length to start with.
Right.
If the rod feels inordinately stiff, lengthen the drop. If the
Right.
rod feels soft, shorten the drop.
Right. Okay.
And there's no reason why you shouldn't start off with about a 6-foot drop just to try the simple pendulum. Now, if
Okay.
people start off with great big long drops like this and they start getting into trouble, but you're talking about a big arc. and
Right.
it's- See, we're
Yeah.
only starting here. To
Right.
use that sort of arc, you want to think in terms of starting
You actually
right,
need to be behind.
right
Yeah.
round here, you see.
Right, I'm with you. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, the only way I'm going to get on with this pendulum cast is keep practicing it. I must admit, I found the off the ground such an effective and simple technique to use. It's the one I've predominantly been using for all my fishing recently.
Well, for most people, the off-the-ground cast is more than adequate. I mean,
Yeah.
this is your gear, but I mean, I should be able to use it.
Nice high curve. And utterly effortless, Philip Hyde.
There you are, it's about 170 yards, no problem at all.
Right.
Whop it back in again. Old friend of mine, years ago, said a rod won't cast properly unless it's 90% broken. Now, people tend to get very frightened when the rods bend, but rods are designed to bend.
What you up to, Phil?
Right, this is a smoke bomb we've got here. The problem with pendulum casting is the lead travels so fast that the camera can't normally pick it up.
Right.
So, this should give off a nice red light
Uh-huh.
and a bit of white smoke, and we'll be able to see it.
All right. What now?
Right, have you got a light back?
No, I got dark brown overcoat.
Right, light blue
Sorry.
touch paper and retire gracefully.
Retire with no grace. That's the cast at normal speed, but you can't see what happens. So let's look at it in slow motion and freeze frame. At this point, the lead is normally put on the ground for the high inertia cast, but just a flick instead sends the lead out to its furthest point away from the caster. Then the rod is dipped towards the lead, which cushions any jerk in the swing at this point. A firm push towards the ground will, if executed correctly, send the lead high in the air to this point, where the casting power stroke can begin. Notice that the lead hovers for a fraction of a second, and that the head is turning to look at the aerial target. The power stroke starts from here, and beware of chasing the lead with the rod, trying to make the lead go higher in the air by pulling the rod in at this point so that the rod tip goes over your right shoulder. At this point, the rod is starting to load at the tip, and the shoulders are turning as the left hand rises, power coming from the legs to twist the waist and trunk. As we are on a steep pebble beach, the rod has not been brought through as low as it would be on a flat sandy beach. The caster's weight has transferred from right to left foot by the right foot stabbing down at the beach as the caster leans into the rod, producing a beautifully compressed rod which can now smoothly unroll and deliver lead, bait and apparent rocket propulsion out to where you would otherwise need a boat.
Liam's cast. Good starting position's essential. Good starting position. Push down, dip, that's fine, yes. Let's look at this cast in slow motion. As with all athletic events aimed at projecting an object any distance, a firm basis is essential. Liam is using the high inertia method to get the lead swinging. Having summed up the aerial target, with the lead already placed by his feet, a firm push down towards the ground with the left hand has sent the lead away fast enough to allow the rod to be dipped at the end of the outswing. Notice that the line between lead and rod tip is almost parallel with the ground. The lead now swings back to the angler's right side, and as the lead peaks, it's now time for the head to turn to look at the aerial target. Liam is following my instructions nicely. Rod is now parallel to the beach, left hand high and ready to pull as the right hand punches the now well loaded rod to launch the lead away into Neptune's kingdom. Notice that in both casts, the emphasis is on a sound technique. When the technique is right, distance comes almost by itself. Liam is already in the 130-140 yard bracket, and 3 months occasional practice should see him top 175 yards. Not far, you say. You pace it out. Oh, not bad. You better keep practicing that.
Yeah.
You've got to get a little bit more zing in the power stroke.
Right.
A little bit more confidence.
Okay.
Don't worry about the lead hitting the ground. If it does touch the ground,
Yeah.
lengthen the drop. Don't shorten it.
Right.
Lengthen the drop.
Ah, temptation to shorten it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And now I just happened to notice that a mate of mine who's way up the other, has just made a bad cast into the saloon bar of the cricketers.
Oh, right.
So I
yeah.
think maybe we ought to go and
Yeah.
join him and see if we can find if his lead went in the fireplace or in the...
Or the doodah. That would be quite a good prelude to casting in confined conditions, because next week I'm rock fishing. You're going to come and show me how to do it on Plymouth Breakwater, Phil. No tourists, no people, 1.5 miles of space, no danger.
Except to me.
About the best place to take me, isn't it? Do you like the 6 swings to the pendulum cast, you know, before I get the thing out?
Well, when you get the hang of it, you'll find it's one out, one in. I was going to say something a bit crude then, but I wouldn't.
No, that's a good idea. Well, it was a gorgeous day before the Force 6 arrived, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a shame about that.
Sea being what it is, this is a classic example. We can see nothing, so therefore you can assume everything's clear. Wrong. There's a million ton of boulders here, isn't there?
Oh, yeah.
So talk to me, what do you think about the way we fish, given conditions like this, and the fact that we can't see what we're doing when we're not working on a nice sandy beach with clear spreads for miles?
Well, the bottom of the sound here, once you get away from the bottom of the breakwater, then you're on reasonably clear ground. It's a little bit mixed. There's 1 or 2 stray boulders, but otherwise you're reasonably clear. You just have to keep your fingers crossed that you can whip your line up and out of the way, get your whatever you've got on the end up near the surface before you reach the end 40, 50 yards.
Right.
Because that's the main problem. Of course, once the tide comes up a little bit, then this, what appears to be floating weed's not floating, it's just so shallow at the end here. It's only about 2 feet of water down the bottom here. There's tons and tons of weed there. You just have to hope that any fish that you get doesn't dive into it. By the time you get your fish in, with a little bit of luck, you've played him out.
Right.
Leave him out there to play and don't bring him in here and let him thrash
Don't
about
go
here.
hurtling it in because of the amount of debris between you and him.
Exactly.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Tire the
Yeah,
fish
that
out
makes sense.
there.
Yeah.
When we used to see it down Torquay, Hope's Nose, people would bring a big place in fresh and he'd dive straight into the reef.
Right.
Whereas if you just took your time and just let him play about outside,
Yeah.
60 yards off, you were perfectly okay. He was
At
tired.
the end of the day, he's going to come up, isn't he?
Exactly.
What would you do about this side? I mean, look at this stuff here, really. How would you fish something like this? Because
Well, you've got to take
on
a
a flood
chance.
tide, it's all coming in. It's got to be.
Oh yeah, you've got to take a chance on this.
Yeah.
When I used to come fishing here with some of the Newton Abbot and Torquay lads, they'd put on 30, 35 pound line straight through,
Right.
6 ounce lead, and just heave it out there about 30, 40 yards beyond the boulders.
Right.
And you just had to pray that you could steer in among these. I mean, all they are is just huge breakwaters.
They're enormous, yeah, enormous bits of rock. I think in many ways, of course, that perhaps, would you think you were better leaving your rig out there until you've hopefully got a fish on?
Oh yeah, once it's out
rather
there.
than trying to bring anything in for a
Mm.
changeover?
Oh yeah, once it's out there, leave it out there to get a bite.
Yeah.
Chances are, if you're fishing with a bit of ragworm or peter crab, hardback crab, soft crab like we've got today, you'll get a bite from a wrasse.
Right.
Chances are.
Yeah.
So just leave it there until you get a bite. If after 15 minutes and you haven't had anything, then whip it in quick as you can.
And go like the clappers again. Yeah.
Again, talking to some of the local boys who used to fish out here a lot, they used to draw a diagram at low tide on here with a bit of chalk so they could
That's a good
mark
idea.
the gaps.
Yes, that's a good idea. In fact, that's a good idea for any venue, really, isn't it? To walk in and just do a little sketch of where the main rocks are and the bits that are going to give you trouble.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the weed is often more trouble than the rocks, isn't it? So here I am with my beach caster, my multiplier, my main lines, my shock leaders, all my terminal tackle. I'm standing on rocks. It's going to get dark soon. What other and final bits of kit should I bring with me to make sure I can fish effectively and safely into the dark from the shore?
Well, the one thing we haven't got today is any sort of pressure lantern. But there again, we're not staying on into dark.
No.
We haven't got a headlight
Right.
because we're not staying on into dark. Basically, we've got everything we need
Yeah, that does it.
except a pint of
Got the
Guinness.
lot. Pint of Guinness. Yes. A keg. A barrel. Whoops.
Excellent.
Apart from the little bump into the breakwater on the first attempt, that wasn't bad, was it?
No, that was all right. It's going in the right direction. That's the
Yeah,
main
I'm getting
thing.
comfortable at and confident at getting it in the right direction now.
Well, that's the main thing. Live sand eel going out now.
Uh-huh. Yeah, keep working on that, Phil. You'll be all right. You'll be all right. I must take you on a boat sometime.
What, where you don't need the car?
Where you don't need to cast, you know. Where you lower it 250 feet.
Instead of slinging it.
That's right,
250
yeah.
feet.
That's a good game. Yeah. I can cast 80 yards straight down, you know.
All we've got to do now is wait for and we're away.
I should wind in that slack on mine, shouldn't I?
Yeah, take that up a little bit. Give her a seat.
Thank you, sir. I was just thinking, I see no ships. His fault was Napoleonic, is Napoleonic.
Well, that's what it's built for.
Little guns would have hung out of those windows, wouldn't they? Do you think much fishing went on through them?
I'd like to say, actually. I would...
With the breakwater not here, this was, because it's basically shale, isn't it? We've got shale and mud through here.
Must have
With the
taken a
sand,
colossal battering at times.
What a wallop. Yeah.
I imagine that was the sort of equivalent of being sent to the Antarctic, I should think,
Yeah.
being sent out to a place like that,
Yeah.
being in charge of that. You know, only the naughty boys got put in charge of a place like that.
Yeah. Do you know this is the only offshore breakwater in the world?
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, one of the things that puzzled me about this place, I've never been... Access is denied for most of the year, isn't it? I mean, I can understand the waters actually wash over this. That's where all this flotsam rubbish and
It
stuff
does. I
comes
mean,
from.
I've come down that the beauty of this from a boat point of view is that even when you've got a huge southerly blow, you can actually anchor up just inside the curve at the end of the breakwater by the lighthouse and cast out into the stream. So you've got a 4-7 belting through, but you can sit in a boat and go fishing.
Lovely.
Tremendous
Just the
stuff.
job.
You know.
That's the job. Of course, here, this side in a boat, you can't catch bass.
that side of the boat, you can.
You can, absolutely. Yeah, I have never caught a bass on the inside of the breakwater.
Well, let's
Not
see if
at
that
all.
live sand eel does any good.
Yeah.
Mind you, they'll raise like a bit of live sand eel. So they're like
Do they? Yeah.
Well, they're like a bit of dead sand eel.
Racing into the sunset.
Wonderful, isn't it?
Great. Can't go wrong. What are you going to show me next time we go out?
Big spools.
Big spool.
There's a subject.
Sadly neglected.
Yeah, well, the big problem, of course, is that they've always been the sort of bad boy in the fishing world. You know, they've always been the one that the poor chap who can't cast very well tends to end up using.
So what are you going to do then? Sling this other line out to give yourself another chance while you pull that fish in?
Well, I'll leave that one knocking away there.
Yeah, happily feeding.
I think I can double my chances here. You should have brought your other rod.
I should have done actually, yeah.
Never
yeah.
mind. Let's see how we
Increases all the odds, doesn't it? I think that's in Tor Point. Hypnotic, isn't it? It's got to be the only thing that you get hypnotised by that doesn't move.
Well, it's funny you should say that. There was an old chap I used to go fishing with years and years and years ago. And we went down on the beach one day and there he was, sitting next to his rod. And I said, hello, mate. Anything doing? No, nothing. I said, what bait are you using? He said, I ain't using any. Think about it.